The email arrived at 3:17 a.m. Daniel Carter was awake, lying flat on his back, staring at the cracked ceiling of his one-bedroom apartment. Sleep had abandoned him years ago, ever since the accident. Nights were the worst. Silence made room for memories, and memories always led to guilt. The soft ping of his laptop shattered the quiet. Daniel frowned. Nobody emailed him at this hour. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes, and turned toward the small desk by the window. Rain tapped gently against the glass, streaking the city lights into distorted shapes. His laptop screen glowed in the darkness. One new message. The sender's name made his stomach tighten. Estate of Blackwood at legalmail.com. That's not spam, he muttered. He clicked it. Open quote. Subject, urgent. Property claim. Mr. Daniel Carter, you have been named the sole heir to the Blackwood Estate, located in Grayson County. According to sealed records, you are legally required to claim the property within 7 days. Failure to do so will result in permanent state possession. Arthur Hensley, legal executor. Close quote. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Blackwood Estate? He had never heard the name. He had no family left, no relatives who owned estates or properties. His parents had died years ago, and whatever extended family existed had cut ties after the trial. Something felt wrong. Then he noticed the attachment, a single image file. His fingers hovered over the mouse before clicking. The photo opened slowly. A house. Old. Massive. Decaying. It stood alone on top of a hill, surrounded by dead trees that twisted toward it like broken fingers. The windows were dark, hollow, watching. The sky above the mansion was unnaturally grey, as if the clouds refused to pass over it. Daniel's breath caught. His chest tightened painfully. He had seen this house before. Not in real life, in dreams. For years, the same dream had returned again and again, him standing at the foot of a hill, staring up at a house that felt alive, listening to something inside calling his name. He slammed the laptop shut. No, he whispered, that's not possible. But sleep never came that night. By morning, the decision had already been made. Daniel packed a small bag, grabbed his car keys, and left the city behind. He told himself he was only going to verify the claim, sign some papers, and leave. That's all. Yet deep down he knew he was lying to himself. The road to Grayson County was long and eerily empty. Miles of farmland stretched on both sides, the crops dry and lifeless despite the season. The further he drove, the quieter the world became. At mile 47, the radio crackled and went dead. At mile 52, his phone lost all signal. At mile 60, the fog rolled in. Thick, heavy, suffocating. Then he saw the sign. It was rusted, barely standing, swaying slightly though there was no wind. Welcome to Grayson County, population 312. Daniel slowed his car. The town beyond the sign looked frozen in time. Buildings lined the street, their windows dusty but intact. A grocery store stood open, fruit rotting in wooden crates. A child's bicycle lay on its side near the sidewalk. Farther down, a playground creaked softly as an empty swing moved back and forth on its own. Daniel swallowed. "Hello?" he called out from his car window. No answer. He parked at an old gas station, the bell above the door jingling as he stepped inside. The smell of dust and oil filled the air. Shelves were fully stocked, yet untouched. A coffee cup sat on the counter, stained and cold. Behind the counter hung a calendar. Daniel stepped closer. October 1997. "That can't be right," he whispered. A voice spoke behind him. "You shouldn't be here." Daniel spun around. An elderly woman stood near the doorway. Her back was slightly hunched, her skin pale and stretched thin. Her eyes were cloudy, unfocused, blind, yet somehow staring straight at him. I'm just passing through," Daniel said. Her lips trembled into a thin smile. "No one passes through Grayson County," she replied. "They only arrive." She tilted her head. "The house called you." Daniel felt his throat go dry. "What house?" Her smile vanished. "Blackwood," she said softly. "It remembers everyone." The lights flickered violently. Daniel blinked. The woman was gone. The door swung open and shut, the bell ringing wildly. Panic surged through him. He ran back to his car, heart pounding, hands shaking as he turned the key. The engine roared to life. He didn't look back as he drove uphill, following the narrow road that led out of town. At the top of the hill, the fog parted. And there it was. Blackwood Estate, as Daniel parked the car at the foot of the hill. The engine died with a weak cough, as if even it refused to stay near the house. Silence followed, thick, absolute silence. No birds, no insects, not even wind. Daniel stepped out. The air smelled old, like damp wood and something sour beneath it. The iron gates stood open, their hinges rusted, frozen mid-welcome. A single crow perched atop the gate, watching him with unnatural stillness. "Just a house," Daniel muttered, but his voice trembled. Every step up the gravel path felt heavier, as if the ground itself resisted him. The mansion grew larger with each pace, its windows reflecting the grey sky like unblinking eyes. The front door was already ajar. That was the first undeniable warning. Daniel pushed it open. The door creaked long and loud, echoing through the mansion like a scream dragged across stone. Cold air rushed out, carrying a faint whisper, too soft to understand but unmistakably human. Inside, the house smelled preserved, not abandoned. Furniture stood perfectly arranged, draped in white sheets like bodies prepared for burial. A chandelier hung above, swaying slightly, though there was no breeze. Tick! 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 A grandfather clock stood against the wall. Its hands were frozen at 3:17. Daniel swallowed. "Hello?" he called. His voice echoed down the corridor, then echoed again. Not the same echo. Slower. Closer. Daniel turned sharply. Nothing. He moved deeper into the house. Each step caused the floorboards to groan beneath him, not with age, but with strain, like the house resented being walked on. The hallway walls were lined with paintings. Landscapes, portraits, all dark, all watching. He felt it, the sensation of being observed from every angle. A door at the end of the hall slowly creaked open by itself. Daniel's heart pounded. Against all reason, he followed. The library. The library was massive, stretching higher than it should have, with shelves packed tightly with books whose titles had been scratched out. Dust floated in the air like ash. But what stopped him were the photographs. Hundreds of them. Families, couples, children. Each photo looked normal at first glance. Birthday parties, weddings, holiday dinners. Then Daniel noticed the pattern. Every final photograph in each set had one thing in common. Someone was missing. Their place stood empty, their face scratched out violently, clawed away until the paper tore. Daniel stepped back, his breathing uneven. That's not possible. He reached the final photograph on the wall. His hands began to shake. It was him, standing in the library. The angle was wrong, taken from behind, close, intimate. A cold breath brushed his ear. "You finally came home." Daniel spun around. The library was empty, but the door slammed shut. The journal. The lights flickered violently. A desk lamp snapped on by itself, illuminating a single object resting at the center of the room, a leather-bound journal. Daniel approached it slowly. The cover was cracked, stained dark at the edges. He opened it. The handwriting was frantic, jagged, uneven, like the writer had been shaking. Open quote. "The house chooses. It listens. It remembers. Once it knows your guilt, it will not let you leave. We tried to burn it. We tried to bury it. But the house feeds on what we hide." Close quote. The pages near the end were smeared with something dark, blood. Daniel slammed the journal shut. That's when he heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling him. "Who's there?" he shouted. The footsteps stopped. A child's laughter echoed from behind the bookshelves. Then crying, then screaming. The sounds overlapped, layering into a horrifying chorus that filled the room. Daniel covered his ears, collapsing to his knees. "Stop! Please, stop!" The lights went out, total darkness. Something breathed close to his face. Not warm, not cold. Wrong. The locked door. When the lights returned, the house had changed. The walls looked darker, closer. Veins, actual veins, pulsed faintly beneath the wallpaper, beating in time with his heart. Daniel ran to the door. Locked. He pounded on it. "Open! Open!" The grandfather clock began ticking again. Tick, tick, tick. A voice whispered from everywhere at once. "You were supposed to remember sooner." The floor cracked beneath him. Daniel screamed as the room tilted, the walls bending inward like ribs closing around a heart. The last thing he saw before everything went black was the photograph on the wall. His image, now scratched out. Daniel woke up choking. Not on air, but on the smell of rust and rot, thick in his throat like damp earth mixed with blood. His body lay sprawled across the cold wooden floor of the mansion's hallway. The lights were on now, but they no longer felt comforting. They flickered weakly, as if the house itself was struggling to stay awake. The silence was wrong. No clock ticking, no wind, no creaking. The house was listening. Daniel pushed himself up, his palms slick with sweat. The walls around him looked swollen. The wallpaper rippled gently, rising and falling like lungs drawing breath. Thin cracks spread across the surface, and from inside those cracks came whispers, soft, layered, endless. "Daniel, you remember now?" "No," he muttered. "This isn't real." The floor groaned beneath his feet as he stood. Somewhere far below, something heavy moved. Then he saw it, a door at the end of the corridor. It hadn't been there before. The wood was darker than the rest of the house, almost black, and strange symbols were carved into it. Circles, iron shapes that made his head throb if he stared too long. A faint red light leaked from beneath the door. The whispers grew louder. "Go down." Against every instinct, Daniel walked forward. Each step felt like wading through deep water. When he reached the door, it slowly opened on its own, releasing a wave of freezing air that smelled of ash. Beyond it was a staircase spiraling downward into darkness. The house wanted him below. The stairs seemed endless. With every step, memories surfaced, unwanted, sharp, violent. Laughter, glass breaking, a scream cut short. Daniel gripped the railing as his knees weakened. His heartbeat echoed loudly, syncing with a deep, rhythmic thumping that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Boom, 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 like a giant heart. At the bottom of the staircase, he entered a massive underground chamber carved directly into stone. The ceiling was supported by thick beams wrapped in chains. Rusted hooks dangled overhead, swaying gently though there was no wind. Candles burned along the walls, freshly lit. At the center of the room stood a tall mirror framed in black iron, its surface unnaturally smooth. Symbols were carved all around it, glowing faintly red. Daniel approached slowly. The mirror was dark. Then it moved. The glass rippled like water, and suddenly it wasn't showing the chamber anymore. It showed a road, a familiar road. His breath caught in his throat. "No! No, stop!" But the mirror didn't listen. The memory played in horrifying clarity. Rain poured down the windshield. The road lights blurred into long streaks of yellow. Daniel saw himself behind the wheel, young, angry, reeking of alcohol. Beside him sat his sister, Emily. "Danny, slow down," she said, fear trembling in her voice. "Please." "I'm fine," he snapped. "Just relax." The speedometer climbed. 60, 70, 90. The truck appeared out of nowhere. The crash was deafening. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. Fire burst through the engine like a living thing. Daniel watched himself crawl out of the wreckage, coughing, bleeding, but alive. Then he saw Emily, trapped. The door crushed inward, flames licking toward her legs. Her screams filled the night. "Danny!" she cried. "Help me!" The mirror zoomed in on his own face, wide-eyed, panicked. Then it showed the moment he never allowed himself to remember. He ran, away from the car, away from her screams, away from the fire. The mirror shattered. Daniel fell to his knees, screaming. "I was scared," he sobbed. "I didn't know what to do." The chamber trembled. From the shadows, figures emerged. Men, women, children. Their bodies were burned, twisted, broken. Their eyes glowed with the same red light as the symbols on the walls. Chains dragged behind them, scraping against the stone. They surrounded him. "You left us," they said in one voice. Daniel backed away, shaking. "I didn't kill you." "You chose yourself," they replied. That was enough. A familiar figure stepped forward. Emily. Her body was charred, her clothes melted into her skin. Yet her face was calm, too calm. "Why didn't you come back?" she asked softly. Tears streamed down Daniel's face. "I was a coward." She reached out, her burned fingers inches from his cheek. "The house found you because you never faced it," she said. "It feeds on guilt. On toll, those who run." The walls began to close in. The house roared. And Daniel realized the truth. Blackwood Estate was not haunted. It was hungry, and it had finally been fed. To be continued in AC4. If you want, I can. Make Act 4. The house began to scream, not with sound, but with pressure. The walls pulsed violently, veins rising beneath rotting wallpaper. The floor trembled as if the mansion itself were having a seizure. Daniel staggered through the hallway, clutching his head. "Stop!" he shouted. "I know what I did." The whispers grew louder. "Coward, murderer, you escaped." She didn't. The front door was visible at the end of the corridor, open. Moonlight spilled through it like salvation. Daniel ran. Each step felt heavier, as if unseen hands gripped his ankles. The portraits on the walls changed as he passed, faces screaming, eyes bleeding, mouth stitched shut. The house began to scream, not with sound but with pressure. The walls pulsed violently, veins rising beneath rotting wallpaper. The floor trembled as if the mansion itself were having a seizure. Daniel staggered through the hallway, clutching his head. "Stop!" he shouted. I know what I did." The whispers grew louder. "Coward. Murderer. You escaped." She didn't. The front door was visible at the end of the corridor, open. Moonlight spilled through it like salvation. Daniel ran. Each step felt heavier, as if unseen hands gripped his ankles. The portraits on the walls changed as he passed, faces screaming, eyes bleeding, mouths stitched shut. A clock began ticking again, 3:17. The same time, always the same time. As Daniel reached the door, the temperature dropped sharply. Frost crawled across the wooden floor. A familiar voice whispered behind him. "Danny." His heart stopped. He turned slowly. Emily stood at the far end of the hall, not burned this time, whole, wearing the blue jacket she had worn the night of the accident. Tears filled Daniel's eyes. "Emily, I've looked for you everywhere." She smiled faintly, but her eyes were ancient. "You never looked back," she said. The house groaned, beams cracking above them. "She screamed for you," the walls whispered. "She burned alone." Daniel fell to his knees. "I was scared," he sobbed. "I didn't mean to leave you. I thought the car would explode. I thought I'd die." Emily stepped closer. Each step echoed unnaturally. "I was scared too," she said softly, "but I stayed." The front door began to close, slowly, the gap of freedom narrowing. Daniel looked at it, then back at her. "What is this place?" he asked. "Why me?" Emily looked around. "This house feeds on unfinished guilt," she said. "It traps those who run from what they've done. Every soul here thought they escaped punishment." She placed her hand on his chest, "But guilt always comes home." The ceiling cracked open. Black liquid poured down the walls. Screams echoed from beneath the floor, voices of everyone the house had claimed. Emily stepped aside, revealing a second door behind her. It led downward, into darkness. "One must stay," she said. "The house demands balance." Daniel shook his head violently. "No, I can't." "You already did," she replied gently. The front door was almost closed now. Daniel stood up. For the first time since the accident, he stopped running. He looked at Emily and nodded. "I'm ready." The house fell silent. Emily kissed his forehead. "Thank you for coming back." Daniel walked past her and opened the door to the darkness. The moment he stepped inside, the mansion exhaled. The front door slammed shut. The house became still. Epilogue. Spring came to Grayson County. The Blackwood Estate stood quiet on the hill, restored, no ivy, no decay. Real estate listings claimed it was finally safe. At exactly 3:17 a.m. a new email arrived in someone's inbox. Subject: urgent, property claim. Attached was a photograph of the house. If you looked closely at the upstairs window, a man was standing there, watching, waiting.